Welcome to the Patriots Report, part of the Believe Network, presented by FanDuel. My name is Christopher Price, the Boston Globe and BostonGlobe.com, coming to you a day after the Patriots' 27-14 win over the New York Jets on Thursday, November 13th. Today is Friday, November 14th. New England moves to 9-2 with the victory. It's their 8th straight win. I put this on social media a couple of times, and it's worth repeating on multiple occasions. The last time the Patriots lost a game, the Red Sox had not clinched a playoff spot. It's been 2 months since New England has lost, and they've maintained their position at the top of the AFC East. And now going into the weekend, they are the number one seed in the AFC. I'm not sure anyone expected them, maybe anyone outside of Gillette Stadium anyway, expected them to be in the position that they're in heading into the late stages of November. Now, after the game, they have a couple of days off. They have a mini bye fundamentally before they start getting ready for Cincinnati on November 23rd. This is a good time of year to have some time off because they are a little bit banged up. To this point in the season, the Patriots have been very lucky for the most part when it comes to avoiding serious injury. Christian Gonzalez missed the first 3 games of the season. Antonio Gibson went down with a knee injury early last month in the win over Buffalo. But for the most part, since then, New England has avoided serious injury. Ramondre Stevenson, however, missed his second consecutive game with a turf toe issue. Christian Ellis also missed his second consecutive game with a hip problem. And Kayshon Boutte is out, or was out, for the Jets game, his second consecutive game, with a hamstring issue. They also had Milton Williams go down in the first half. He came back. He was spotted afterward in the locker room with a wrap on his ankle. It's my understanding, at least as it stands right now, that it's going to be a short-term thing. But again, this Patriots team is very, very lucky to be able to have some time off between now and their next game, have a few extra days between now and their next game. And then early next month, they'll also have the bye. And so they have 3 games really in the span of a month here. So they have some time off. They can heal up. They can get prepared to really kind of try and take this thing to the next level. Once again, New England ends up winning 27-14. They move to 9-2 on the season, and they now have a couple of days off. A few notes from the game. You guys know by this point what happened. I just kind of want to give you my big takeaways from this thing. I want you to not look at this thing in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is they played on a short week. They had a handful of days, really only a couple of practices to prepare. And this is really, in my experience, this is what good teams do in situations like this. There's no style points. It's just a messy kind of taking care of business sort of win. And that's the way you need to look at this if you're a Patriots fan. They had some struggles on both sides of the ball and in special teams as well. Andy Borregales missed a field goal. But you're going to have those sorts of issues. Even if you're a good team, you're going to have those sorts of issues on a short week, even if you're going up against an inferior opponent like the Jets. So I don't worry about this thing too much. Again, you're not looking at style points in this one. If you're the Patriots, you're looking at just getting it done, getting in, getting out, a minimum of injury. I know we mentioned Milton Williams, but look, the bottom line in this game, there was a minimum of injury. No one got too dinged up, and they are on to Cincinnati, in the words of a former head coach. The quarterback was great again. 25 for 34 for 281 yards, 1 sack, 1 touchdown pass. That was to Trevion Henderson. This was the second straight game where they needed Henderson to show up, and he did. Henderson had 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown, his first receiving touchdown of his NFL career. He ended up with 19 carries for 62 yards, a career high 19 carries for 62 yards. And I wrote this for the Boston Globe. You cannot really look at the production in this game, the pure production numbers in this game. He only ran for 3.3 yards per carry, but his value goes beyond the numbers in this one on a couple of levels. First of all, just being able to run the ball, they needed running backs. They are perilously thin at the running back position. Terrell Jennings was active, but I don't think he played a single snap in this one. And D'Ernest Johnson was in there for a few plays. He had 3 carries for 6 yards. So they needed Trevion Henderson to carry the load in this game, and he did. Once again, 19 carries, 62 yards, 3.3 yards per carry, 2 red zone touchdowns as a runner, both 7 yards. They were able to push the pile with him on one of them. And on the other one, he was able to really display some nice short yardage quickness for the touchdown. And then the third one came in the third quarter. That was the touchdown he had came in the third quarter. That was also a red zone touchdown he had as a receiver. And so, look, the numbers, again, are not important. The numbers are almost secondary in this case because they needed him to be able to, be out there and get somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 touches. He also had 5 catches for 31 yards. Not overly explosive, but when you consider the fact that he was the last man standing in that running back room, I think those numbers are pretty good. The other thing to keep in mind, he remained a really solid play action option, a play fake option in the second half of this one. There were a handful of times where Maye would drop back, he would fake it to Henderson, and the defense would collapse in on Henderson, and that would free up the likes of Steph Diggs or Matt Collins or Hunter Henry for the reception. There was one reception that really stands out in the second half, 20-plus yards to Diggs, that I think was a direct result of the play fake to the running back. Look, it's not the only reason that Drake Maye was, once again, incredibly accurate. He was 11 for 11 to start the game and just sat back there and was able to really attack the New York offense, or the New York defense. But the option of Henderson in the backfield as a play fake possibility certainly allowed the Patriots some flexibility when it came to the passing game. So again, not the only reason why Maye had the numbers that he did, but Henderson's presence back there was not completely coincidental. Talked about Henderson. Again, another nice game for him. He has over 200 rushing yards in the last 2 weeks and 5 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns on the season. He leads the team in touchdowns. This is not Gale Sayers or Walter Payton or Corey Dillon circa 2004. But he continues to get the job done, and he continues to make his case as a lead back. Now, once again, I wrote this for the Boston Globe. There are going to be questions based on Henderson's performance the last couple of weeks and the fact that Ramondre Stevenson has been out now 2 straight weeks and could be out for the November 23rd game against the Bengals. But you have to wonder what direction the Patriots are going to take when it comes to the running game moving forward. If Henderson is there and Stevenson is there, what are they going to do? I think the best possible option for this team is to split carries moving forward. At the very least, I believe Henderson has done more to earn more carries than the 10 or 15 touches he had at the start of the year. He's proven to be an NFL back. They need to lean on him more, even if it comes down to the idea of splitting carries. This is a guy who deserves more opportunity. The Patriots preach doing what you can with the opportunities that you've been given. I talked to Garrett Bradbury in the locker room after the game, and he said exactly that, and he continues to do that. Henderson, that is, continues to do that, continues to make the most of his opportunity, and continues to work hard and push in the right direction. So, Maye, Henderson, and let's give a game ball to Steph Diggs, too. Now, Diggs didn't have his best game. He by his own admission afterward, he left a few plays on the field. He left some yardage on the field. The first incomplete pass was a target for Diggs in the second quarter, late in the second quarter. That was just a misfire, just didn't work. And again, it was, his own words. He said he left some plays out there on the field, but 9 catches, 11 targets, 105 yards, the third 100-plus yard game of his New England career. And I think Diggs has been everything that they've needed him to be, both on and off the field at this point in his career. And look, it's 11 games in, so we're still in the honeymoon phase, but you have to acknowledge the fact that this team wouldn't be where they are if Diggs wasn't there. 6 of his 11 catches on Thursday night ended up going for first downs. I'm sorry. And it's clear that Drake Maye is continuing to look for him as a primary option in 3rd and 4th down situations. think it was Pop Douglas who had a 4th down catch on Thursday night against the Jets. But Diggs has become the go-to guy, and he continues to look more and more like the guy that they hoped he would become, a true number 1 wide receiver. He was incredibly important to the game plan on Thursday night for a couple of reasons, not the least of which was the Jets secondary is in a bit of a shambles after the Sauce Gardner trade, and we saw that on a number of levels. This is not a good secondary. And then they didn't have Kayshon Boutte. And so you knew there was going to be more placed on Diggs' shoulders, and he was more than willing to respond. So the 3 offensive guys, in my mind, who got game balls, Trevion Henderson, Drake Maye, and Steph Diggs. No real surprises there. The defense, and look, it was funny, Robert Spillane joked about it after the game, that, look, I know you all want to ask why we continue to struggle out of the gate. It's a maddening thing about this team, and I think in a lot of ways it's what's holding them back from being truly a championship team. You can't do that in January consistently and hope to play deep into the postseason. You just can't. You can do it against the Jets. You can do it against the Panthers, maybe the Falcons, Titans, Saints, whatever the case may be. You can give up an opening score and dig yourself out of the hole for a few reasons, including the fact you have a talented roster up and down, and you are the best. They remain the best 3rd down team in football when it comes to point differential. They've outscored their opponents, I think, something in the neighborhood of 40 yards. I knew it was 41, I think, coming into this game, but they remain the best 3rd quarter team in football. And so that erases a lot of the deficiencies. But at the same time, they can't continue to do it. It's the most maddening thing about this roster is that they can't get their shit together for the opening drive, and they end up falling behind either 3-0 or 7-0 against an inferior opponent. You can do it against some of these bad teams, but if you do it in the playoffs, you're going to be one and done. So there's some good, there's some bad with this team, but in the end, they moved to 9-2, and once again, you need to look at this thing as just a taking care of business sort of win. Good teams are going to do this. Good teams just going to smother bad teams. And that's what the Patriots did to the Jets in the end. I feel sorry for Justin Fields because there's absolutely nothing there other than Breece Hall on offense. And I think Breece Hall is good, and I think the Jets should be commended for sticking to their game plan. But they just didn't have enough. They had dropped passes. They had bad penalties. They got behind the sticks way too often. And it's just not a good football team. They need to execute now. They need to be able to use those draft picks moving forward. They need to build something for the future. And I don't know if Aaron Glenn's the guy, but I'll stick to this. We could wake up in 2026 and all of a sudden Mike Vrabel will be the most senior coach in the AFC East. I think there's that much heat on Sean McDermott up in Buffalo if they don't win a Super Bowl. I think his job is on the line if they don't win a Super Bowl. Put it this way, at the very least, if they don't at least get to a Super Bowl, I think his job is on the line. And again, we could wake up here and we could see Mike Vrabel as the most senior coach in the AFC East. FanDuel had the Patriots as 11.5-point favorites. They covered, if you listen to me on the podcast this past week with Chris Hogan, you cashed in. Congratulations to you. We do not have, I don't think, I have not seen a line on the Patriots and Bengals. I'm assuming we will see one come Monday. So that's something to keep an eye on moving forward. But I have to imagine that the Patriots are going to be favored in that one by a relatively slim margin. I'm going to say 5 points, 4.5 points. New England should be favored going into that game against Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's made some gains. I'm fascinated by the idea of Joe Burrow leading that offense. And I think it's going to be a fascinating game. I think it's going to be a fascinating game on both sides of the ball. Patriots after Cincinnati, they have the Giants. And then really the next 2 games after the Giants, after the bye week there, they're home against Buffalo on Sunday, December 14th. And then they're on the road after that against Baltimore on December 21st in Baltimore. And those 2 games to me are going to ultimately determine where this Patriots team ends up. We already know the ceiling for this team, and or at least I think we know the ceiling for this team. It feels like it's about 13-4, even as they sit right now at 9-2. I think it's 13-4. Is that going to be enough to get them the number 1 seed? I think if they figure out a way to win at least one of those 2 games, the rest of the games on that schedule are eminently winnable. And so you could be looking at a scenario where 13-4 is going to be good enough to at least get you one of the top 2 seeds, if not the top seed in the AFC this year. And I said it on Toucher and Hardy, and I repeated it in the podcast this past week with Hogan. Right now, they're the best team in the AFC. I think, and that could change, obviously. If Lamar Jackson comes back and sets the world on fire in Baltimore, maybe that's Baltimore. But Indy doesn't impress me right now. The Steelers certainly don't impress me. I think the one team that is still out there that has the potential to really cause some damage is Kansas City. And you guys are going to laugh, but I'm going to say it's Kansas City. Look, I've seen this act way too many times. We saw it here in New England. It feels like Pat Mahomes is in his Tom Brady circa 2011 to 2013 phase, where he kind of had to reinvent himself, and he tried his best to make chicken salad out of chicken, and it just didn't work. I feel like Kansas City has a late season run in them, and I may be going all in on them. I don't know. I may be overestimating them, given the state of where they are, but they're 5-4 right now. They're in 3rd place in the AFC West, and they have a schedule the rest of the way that looks relatively easy. Games against the Raiders, the Titans, the Texans, the Cowboys, and I could still see them sneaking in the back door of the AFC playoffs, just because they've been there so many times before. Mahomes has been there so many times before. Reed has been there so many times before. Travis Kelce, they just know how to play in January. So I'm not counting them out of the playoff picture quite yet. I know that, again, they're 5-4. They've been bounced around a little bit. They've struggled across the board, but I'm not counting them out yet. The other team, the AFC West is filled with a couple of, not filled with, but the AFC West has some odd teams. I'm not at all sold on the Broncos. I feel the same way about the Broncos that I feel about the Colts. They're good, but they're not quite there yet. The Chargers could be dangerous at 7-3. And again, the Chiefs at 5-4. But right now, you're the Patriots. You're 9-2. You have the best team in the AFC. And you have the inside track right now on at least one of those top 2 seeds in the AFC playoff picture. All right, so I put out a call on Blue Sky and Twitter for questions, post-game questions, and I wanted to get your take on a couple of different things. First off, Keith Gentis on Blue Sky, with the prospect of facing Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson in the not-too-distant future, how concerned should we be with the success Fields had running zone reads on Thursday night? Concerned, but not overly concerned. Again, this is a game that I don't want to take too much out of this game. You look at what they did on a short week. It was not about a lot of game planning. It's almost like a preseason game in a lot of ways. I'm not going to say it was completely vanilla, but there wasn't a lot of game planning. A lot was reliant on just the talent on both sides of the ball, and the Patriots had more talent than the Jets. It will be an issue, though, if they don't get it locked down, because the Jets were able to run the ball more consistently, I think, than any other team has against the Patriots this year. It's a low bar, admittedly, because the Patriots have done a really good job clamping down on the run game. The last 2 games, though, they've had a running back, an opposing running back, crack 50 yards. So you kind of take that for what it's worth. But it's something that needs to be sharpened up between now and the playoffs. Mike D here on Blue Sky. What's going on with Kyle Williams? He doesn't appear to be on the same page with Drake Maye. I am not worried about Kyle Williams. I would be much more worried about Kyle Williams if they were force-feeding him 50 snaps a game and he wasn't getting it done. Right now, Kyle Williams is a really good fifth receiver on this team who's being asked to do a little bit more because Kayshon Boutte's out. And I think for what he's being asked to do, he's doing okay. He's not great, but let's keep in mind he's a rookie. It's going to happen for him. It will. It's going to happen for him. He's sitting and waiting behind other more talented wide receivers. If the Patriots needed him at this stage of his career and he wasn't executing, or if he didn't look like he was on the same page with Drake Maye, then I would be worried. Gets more reps, gets more time in the system. For me, in a lot of ways, Kyle Williams feels like that rookie red shirt that we've seen here for so many seasons. Whether it was Shane Vereen or James White or Trey Flowers, it looks like maybe he's that guy this year. I don't know. I'm going to have to wait and see how the rest of the season plays out for him. But I'm not all that worried about Kyle Williams at this stage of his career, given who's in front of him and given the level of execution that they've had in the wide receiver room to this point in the season. Mike also asked two other questions. How badly is Milton Williams hurt? When will he be back? It is a short-term thing, in my understanding. He is not going to miss a series of weeks for a few reasons. First of all, he was seen in the locker room after the game. And if he was genuinely hurt, if it was a long-term thing, I don't think he would have been in the locker room. Second of all, he was standing right next to Mike Vrabel when they did the post-game handshake thing. So I'm not saying that it's not going to be the kind of thing that's going to put a crimp in his game. But I think the Patriots are at the stage of the season where they can rest guys for a game or two. They have a little bit of cushion. So maybe Milton Williams sits out the Cincinnati game and Tonga gets a few more snaps. Or they rely a little bit more on Christian Barmore. Or some more depth. Eric Gregory, Durden. They get those guys more time to give Milton Williams another week. But I don't think Milton Williams is going to be out for an extended period of time. Mike says, the problem with running the ball seems to be the offensive line not opening up holes. How can that improve with this offensive line? The offensive line has been pretty good. I think that there have been some issues in pass protection, and you'd always like to see more room for a running back to operate. But I think given what we've seen over the course of the last year, I feel okay about the state of the offensive line. It's not perfect. I think Will Campbell struggles from time to time, and I think they have some struggles on the left side with Wilson. And I did like the idea of those heavy packages that they ran out there frequently on Thursday night. And I wouldn't be surprised to see more of that moving forward. I'll say this. I wouldn't be shocked to see Khyiris Tonga get more snaps at fullback by the end of the year than Jack Westover. They like him there that much. He's done a great job. He's been very, very effective doing that. And so I can see more and more of that for him as the season continues on. Our ephemeral on Blue Sky. Does Boutte come back next week, and does that 100% displace Kyle Williams? I wouldn't be surprised to see Boutte out for one more week and a little more Kyle Williams. But again, the Patriots have a little bit more flexibility at that position right now than they might have had earlier in the season, because they have, the schedule allows them to be able to do some things right now and get guys healthy for what is really going to end up being the stretch run. Was Fields' ability to scramble illustrative of a larger problem for the defense, which might be an issue, especially against teams like Denver, Baltimore, Kansas City, and Buffalo? I'll go back to what I said before about Keith. I think it's an issue, but I don't think it's an overriding issue. I don't think it's a fatal flaw for this defense. I think they're talented enough to be able to fix it. If they had a week to game plan, for example, for Patrick Mahomes or Bo Nix, or later in the year when they have to face Buffalo again, I think they'll be able to manage it. I don't think they'll be able to be suffocating, but I think they'll be able to manage the situation in a better way than they did on Thursday night. Look, the Jets just stayed committed to the run, man. I do. I give them a lot of credit for that. It didn't work, but they kept hammering it, and you saw some of the results. Justin Fields can run the ball. And my conversation I had with someone in Foxborough on Thursday night, there was speculation. Do you just make Justin Fields a running back? Do you put 10 more pounds on him and go out and, if you're the Jets, go out and get Arch Manning and create a backfield with Justin Fields and Breece Hall. Stranger things have happened. So just vibing again on Blue Sky. Who are some defensive players that aren't getting the attention they should be? Look, I'll say it too, and it's funny, Vrabel didn't chastise us, but talked about this in a press conference earlier in the early this past week, I should say. He said, I really appreciate you guys writing stories about Tonga and what he's done. I think I could see enough Tonga. Look, Tonga is the most underrated defensive player, maybe the most underrated free agent that they signed this past offseason for what he's been able to do on both sides of the ball. He's been a huge part of their run defense, and he continues to be a very effective fullback, not to mention what he does on field goal units. So the guy's doing everything, and he's a free agent after this year, and you need to figure out a way to keep him around. You need to be in the Tonga business because good things happen when he's here, when he's in the game. So I would start with Tonga there, just vibing again. And I would also put in, look, it hasn't been perfect with him, but I would put Craig Woodson in that conversation as well. Craig Woodson is the only defensive rookie that has played more than 90% of the snaps this season. And we don't talk about that enough. He is on pace to become the first-year player on the defensive side of the ball to play at least 90% of the snaps since Devin McCourty was a rookie back in 2010. And that's pretty good company. I'm not saying that he's the second coming of Devin McCourty, but he consistently is in the right place, makes the good reads, works very well with Jalen Hawkins. He is the kind of safety, the kind of center fielder that this team has needed. And look, this team has undergone an awful lot of changes on the defensive side of the ball, particularly at the safety position. But it feels like right now they've gotten it right. I loved Jabril Peppers. I loved Kyle Duggar. But it's a new era for this defense, and specifically the safety spot. Del Pettis made a great play at the end of the Thursday night game. They continue to get really good, steady, consistent play out of the safety spot, and I think Craig Woodson is a sizable part of that. Timmer on Blue Sky. Given the Pats play Cincinnati next week, do you see the team playing more press man than they have and therefore using less of their off-man coverage? Yes, I do. And I think from an individual standpoint, this could be the biggest game of the year for Christian Gonzalez. I want to know how they're going to kind of deploy their cornerbacks against those Cincinnati wide receivers, even without Joe Burrow in the lineup. Although Joe Burrow is apparently on the road to recovery, I don't think he's going to be back by November 23rd. But it's going to be interesting to see how the Patriots decide to go about playing that group of wide receivers. Last one. Wait till next year on Blue Sky. Your thoughts on time management at the end of the first half. Seems they left themselves in a pinch at the end of the half and had to settle for a missed field goal. Then had almost 2 minutes and 3 timeouts. Could have maybe gotten them the shot to the end zone. Yes. We've talked an awful lot about what the Patriots did right on Thursday night. The defensive struggles they got wrong. And the mismanaged clock at the end of the first half. One of the hallmarks of this team over the recent win streak is more often than not, they've been able to put points on the board at the end of the first half with less than 2 minutes to go in the first half and then score at the start of the second half. And they've turned a lot of these close games, a lot of these games that shouldn't be close at halftime or approaching halftime, into blowouts as a result. We didn't see that Thursday night. And again, I'm willing to excuse a lot of what happened Thursday night just because it was a short week, just because they wanted to get out of there. They wanted to get the victory. They wanted to make sure no one got seriously injured. So I'm willing to excuse an awful lot of that. But the clock mismanagement at the end of the first half was out of character for this team. And it can't be a consistent thing. They need to nip that in the bud because they don't have any margin for error. As well as they're playing right now, they're 9-2. They're the best team in the AFC. It looks like they might have the number 1 seed if things continue the way they look so far anyway. But they have these little things that continue to kind of jump up and bite them from time to time. The clock management, the end of the first half on Thursday, the inability to shut opposing offenses down when it comes to their first drive of the game. Little things like that need to be addressed. But big picture, they're in a very good spot. They really are. They're 9-2. They have some room to rest guys who are a little bit dinged up. and they are in good shape for the post-Thanksgiving stretch drive run here that'll start on, well, not the post-Thanksgiving stretch drive run, but let's say the late November, starting in late November, November 23rd at Cincinnati, 1 p.m. And that's what you're going to get if you're the Patriots. So Hogan and I think we're going to have another podcast on Monday, November 17th. But I want to thank everyone for sending in their questions. And we are going to continue on with the Patriots here. In the meantime, make sure you check out all our coverage. In the meantime, make sure you check out all my coverage in the Boston Globe and bostonglobe.com. And look for another podcast early next week with Hogan and myself. Until then, take care, guys. We'll talk to you very soon.